I'm a freelance journalist. There we go. I am a freelance journalist in Miami, Florida. I'm very grateful to be here to talk about freelance with you all, and just, hey, we have a good time learning from this experience. Everyone can see my slides? Yeah. All right, excellent. So my presentation.
Hang on one second, Clayton. Can you make the slides prominent on the on the Zoom screen?
So we can see him too.
Yeah, trust me, the slides are a little bit more important to me in this one, so I want to make sure everyone can see all the content that's there.
Not for you. Did it do anything for you on the Zoom?
It didn't do anything on the Zoom.
So that would be something.
We're still looking like the Brady Bunch.
Spotlight the slides, is that? But then Clayton's going to be talking, so. All right, so we're working out some tech stuff.
Sorry for the technical difficulty, everyone.
The SVJ Region 2 has the slides. People zooming in, if you want to pin that, that will make it prominent in the call.
So
this is for the audience at home. Yes.
In the view screen.
Say that again?
In the view screen?
Yes. Right. So in Zoom right now, they can see him. Here in our auditorium, we can't see him. Is that correct?
Right. I think that's going to be true, Clayton.
All right, we'll keep running with it. The show must go on. So once again, sorry for the hiccup, everyone. But yes, my presentation is about how to make friends and bylines. My comedic personal journey of how to network and freelance your way to success in journalism. Please, next slide. About me, next slide. In West Philadelphia, born and raised, on the playgrounds where I spend most of my days, chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool, and shooting some b-ball outside of school. Okay, you guys see that one before. Okay, never mind. Let's go to the real slide. Next one, please. This is really me. Like Hazel said before, I'm a freelance journalist in Miami, Florida. I've graduated from Florida International University. I graduated in 2016. Since then, I've been publishing over 10 publications in my 6-year career in journalism. I had a chance to do a lot of things through freelancing and through networking has allowed me to get those opportunities. On top of that, I'm a 2021 Dory Menyard Diversity Fellow from the Society of Professional Journalists. I'm a part of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, and I served on several boards that also led me to network and freelance my way more to several wins. Please, next slide. Networking. Networking is establishing a professional relationship with someone in or around your industry. Networking can land you in opportunities, resources based on how well the relationships develop. Honestly, not to be cliche, but your net worth really is your network. So never burn bridges you may need to cross one day. To be honest, my experience with networking, I feel like it's like plants. Your relationships are like plants. So the more you tend to them, determines what type of fruit it will bear. Next slide. Oh, and this is an example of fruit. So in my undergraduate days at Florida International University, I met a friend named Chris Santiago. Me and him stayed in touch since we graduated. He's currently the senior multimedia producer for FIU Sports. His editing skills are superb. And I got a chance to interview stars from The Lion King, the 2019 reboot. And with the footage, Chris was able to assemble this together. Please play the video.
But we did kind of like to stay up and talk about it. It was really exciting. We were like jumping around and screaming, and it was just a dream. It was just so exciting, and I really just wanted to get started and, hit the ground running and, work with JD. So. Social media, and everybody's like really was. I think that I would have loved this movie even if I wasn't in it. Just because you have a totally different experience when you're watching it, because it's not even close to what the what the 1994 version is. So I made this motion. I'm slapping that was it. It was weird. I just like I was just like I wasn't doing it very often. I was slapping dust. Stop playing box. What was your question? What type of pressure receiving from all people? So maybe what? Yes. Yeah. It's maybe things like this. It's not much pressure to say, oh, you gotta do it right. You gotta do it wrong. Never got to actually be in the studio with anybody else. But I think that it was really awesome meeting the cast. I really got to really, meet each other and be like, oh, we don't know each other, but I know each other. And it was really awesome. And especially meeting Beyonce, because she is so talented and she inspires me like every day. With the love. So I worked with so that's it. That's all I can say. Good. Yeah. But you are bad. I met her before. No, I met her before Beyonce, but I met Beyonce before she did. Just has a say that you're wrong. I was super happy. I felt like, yo, I'm a chill. I felt so awesome. I know this spot. I was so treasured. I was really happy. So, after I was live, I did that. Everyone was like, oh, chapter. I was like, that's right. And it's like, because I was crying, and as soon as he said, cut, there was nothing later. I was just like, oh, hey, tears on my face. I fucked off. Complete professional. Because you are obligated to inform the violence who are watching it. It's just something that you're going to remember. So I can say watch it for your own well-being. Stop. Trash. Cholesterol. Do that.
Man, watching that video always puts a smile on my face, honestly. Was everyone able to hear it properly? All right, wonderful then. Please, next slide.
Oh, there we go.
All right, so these 4 organizations you see on the screen are great places to start networking. The Society of Professional Journalists, the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, the Online News Association, and the National Association of Black Journalists. My personal journey, I got the chance to enjoy a lot of fruit through the people I met through these organizations and the spaces they've created before. So please, everyone in the audience, please look to your left, look to your right, especially the students. These are the people who can possibly bear more fruit for your future. Chris is an example of that for the video. Hazel's an example of this, of me allowing to speak from here, from Atlanta. So I'm just very grateful for all the things that these organizations has brought me and the people that has produced great things in my life. Please, next slide. So learning how to network, learning how to network involves putting yourself out there. Your introduction is like your elevator pitch. It's important you get the most important information about yourself out in a short amount of time. People tend to like stray away from the point when they talk about themselves, and it's no one's fault. It's creature of habit. We know that we're amazing people, and we have to talk about everything from childbirth all the way to where we are now. But unfortunately, the professionals that we want to develop relationships with don't have that. They don't have the attention span and may not even have the time to do it. So it's very important that we just share the most important information. And these 4 questions will teach you how. Please, next slide. So when I was in undergrad, the questions that are left were the ones I used to actually network. I first tell them who I am, make sure they know how to properly pronounce my name, what school I go to, just in case they have a friend who went there or their alumni themselves, what I'm trying to do professionally. I want to be an entertainment journalist. And the last one is what I'm doing now to get there. So Chris Rock had a great analogy talking about if you're stuck on the road, if your car breaks down and you're stuck on the road, someone's more prone to help you if they see you pushing the car to try to get out the way. So as much as people hear your progress towards what you're trying to do, they'll be more prone to actually help you out or give you the assist that you need to get to the next level. To focus on the right column for a moment, what I'm saying nowadays professionally is, what is my name? Once again, how to make sure you know how to pronounce it. Who do I work for? As a freelancer, I'm almost never coming to the same event twice. I mean, I never come into the same event with the same outlet sometimes. So I got to tell people what I'm working for sometimes. What do I cover? Lately, it's been business and entertainment. So that's the main thing I focus on, and how can we work together. So my personal experience when I'm speaking to entrepreneurs, politicians, entertainers, anyone else who just I have to speak to, their lights flash up when they learn that I'm a journalist. But nonetheless, they may have an asset or something that we can work together to create. And sometimes it has gone to the left, but it has gone right more than left. So I've been grateful for the experiences I have had. Please, next slide. Oh, sorry, I talk way too fast. These are the examples I said. Like I mentioned before, I'm a Clayton Gutzmore. When I made this slide, I was currently at Broward College. I want to be an entertainment journalist, which I'm almost there too. I got a chance to do a lot of cool things. And while I was in undergrad, some of the cool things I did do was cover social events and other concerts for my undergraduate newspaper, The Observer. Next slide. Now let's talk about freelancing. Next slide. Freelancing is basically using your skills to produce a product. Give me 1 second. Yeah. Freelancing is basically using your skills to produce a product. Writing, editing, recording video, all that stuff is a skill that you guys use to actually to produce money. Being a freelance journalist for me, as I haven't had the chance to work for a full-time outlet, but I still was able to accumulate a lot of wins from it. The picture on the right is me interviewing Rick Ross in 2018 at the American Black Film Festival. That event, I actually covered it for Variety. So many journalists choose this route because they want to put their career in their own hands. And if they're done right and with enthusiasm, they can earn many wins in this pursuit. Please, next slide. Freelance, excuse me. Pitching freelance stories involves finding out the sources that you want to deliver it in. Not sources, excuse me, the outlets that you want to deliver it in. So the newspapers, the radio stations, the TV news outlets, and other spaces of that nature, you can find out to see how you can deliver your stories. Pitching is the act of explaining the idea in a concise and conceived way. Pitching involves knowledge of the outlet's audience. So you have to know who you're exactly writing for. What message are they sending out to what people is very important. But the way that you actually get your potential story into those outlets and understanding angles, the timeliness, how it appeals to them or how does it apply to their audience and other things of that nature. But if you have an idea that you feel strongly and passionate about, it's very easy to defend that idea to an outlet that may be niche or just may not be in your wheelhouse. Please, next slide. Reputation is everything. To build a good reputation, freelancers need to communicate, and be transparent. There's been several times where I have dropped the ball because I did not communicate to editors about certain stories and the timeline was going to be done. But there are times where I stand by it, and luckily it hasn't been that bad. You're often on your own when you're freelancing. You have to be on top of all your responsibilities when it comes towards producing the story. When it really comes towards writing, the editing, the time frame that you really have is up to you to really manage how much time it will take for really to produce a good product. Your ability to deliver is roughly everything. That determines whether a person will give you a second chance if a mistake happens, or if they'll even let you on in the first place. That's where your clips come in. And for the students in the audience, please, use your student media, the school newspaper, the multimedia production courses, any things of that nature. Those will consider as clips, and those are the items you can present to outlets. But as long as you deliver, be transparent, and really commit, that will lead to more bylines, which will eventually lead to more money. Please, next slide. Oh, and we've reached the end of it. So everyone, I hope you all enjoy my presentation. As you see here, this is the way to contact me. Please feel free to reach out, Twitter, email. I'm very open. I am very team follow back as well. And if you'd like to see more of my stories, more of my work, please go on to authoritory.com/Clayton Gutzmore. And now it's time for the Godmother, excuse me.
Okay. Thank you, Clayton, and thank you for joining us from Atlanta. I know there are other things on your agenda for the weekend. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about 4 business areas that you need to know about to make a profit freelancing: contracts, copyright, money, and taxes. I'm going to walk you through some of the basics in each of those 4 areas. Do we have my presentation up? I guess we have to wait. Clayton's still on, and we're gonna do questions at the end. Dina has a question, Clayton.
Yes.
What stories are you proudest of this year? Like, what's something new that you've done?
Okay. Was the question, what is the stories I've done this year?
Yes.
Yeah.
What have you achieved this year?
What's like an achievement you want to share while we're waiting for this presentation to come up?
Okay, cool. So 2 cool things 2022 has brought me. I got a chance to be published in a food publication and a medical publication. So there's an outlet called Edible South Florida, located in South Florida, which is the Miami Fort Lauderdale, for those who are unaware. They cover all things food, not only just new restaurant openings, but farm shares, or just basically any gatherings circling around food. I had a chance to cover a colleague of mine named Ashley Carter and Jasmine Westbrook. They launched this project called Eat Well Exchange. It's basically trying to get fruits and vegetables out to food deserts and other low-income communities. And for those who don't know what a food desert is, food deserts are areas in metropolitans and other places of the city that don't have easy access to grocery stores and other places that can provide fresh produce and other foods of that name. It's like they have most likely gas station corner stores rather than full-blown grocery stores. So that's one victory. The second victory I got is when I published my first byline in Health Plus magazine. Health Plus magazine is a vertical that's in conjunction with the Atlanta Voice, a Black-owned newspaper here in Atlanta, Georgia. I got a chance to write about another colleague of mine named Tiffany Busan. She goes by the poet named Tiff Boom. She teaches mindfulness and meditation to inner city youth in Miami. So from there, the kids have learned how to calmly express their emotions, deal with stressful situations a lot better, and just dramatic changes in their grades and whatnot. So luckily, I have friends and colleagues who do pretty exceptional things. It is easy to write about them. So I'm very grateful for those victories, and more victories are on the way.
Congratulations.
There we go. Now we have.
We're up and running?
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent.
And Clayton, stick around because there may be more questions for you later.
Not a problem. I'm here, everyone.
Thanks. So once again, the 4 areas are contracts, copyright, money, and taxes. And let's go on to the next slide, please. Contracts. First off, contracts are essential. Don't let the legal sound of this scare you away. It really just is for your protection. You pretty much always have a contract the minute you agree to do an assignment. The question is, what did you agree to do? And is that the same thing as what the assignment editor thinks you're going to do? So the contract lays out the terms of your agreement. How much are you going to produce? Words, pages, minutes, and what approach will you take? Is it going to be a straight news piece, a feature, first-person essay, 10-minute video? That's a long assignment, by the way. A Q&A with audio and a transcript, or just the audio. Next, an important thing for you to know, what's the deadline? But what does that mean? Is that for a draft, or are you going to have an early draft that you send to the editor and then expect an editing process after that? You also want to know how you'll be compensated for your work. How much money will you get and when? Will the check be in the mail or transferred to your bank account? Will they pay your expenses? What if they spike the story? Will you get a kill fee? Spike, does anybody know what spike means? Anybody not know what spike means? I guess maybe everybody in this room has had a story spiked at some point. Yes.
So we have people online, so why don't you just.
Ah, true. Yeah, and I can't see them right now, so. Oh, I guess I could if I went back here. Well, most of them are not showing on screen at the moment. So, okay, so if you're just talking about the assignment on the phone with the assignment editor, write down the details as you're talking and then send an email. Ask the editor to respond with agreements or changes. And when you finally agree on all the details, voila, it's a contract. Slide, please. Things are out of order on my script versus what's on there. Okay, can you go back one? Yes, money. So you need to be compensated for your work. Otherwise, it's not really a business, right? So here's a tip from Catherine Reynolds Lewis. She's one of the co-founders of Medill's Center for Independent Journalists. Catherine talks about the 3 Ps of compensation, the primary one being pay. To have a successful business, you need to be paid for your work. Money should be your primary form of compensation. But here's a tip from me. The more, the better. Don't undersell yourself. And if you aren't making enough to pay for your time, ask for more. It never hurts to ask, right? Sometimes, though, the second P comes into play, and that's prestige. Don't let some second-rate site tell you they're giving you exposure. Exposure is an E, not a P. But if you have an opportunity to work for a big name media outlet, the Washington Post, NPR itself, not just your local NPR station, or Variety for Clayton, and they aren't budging on the fee, and you really want to do the assignment, go for it. Sometimes you want to fall back on the third P, passion. There's a story you just really want to do, and no one's buying. Every so often, you can reward all your other hard work by doing something really fun or maybe worthwhile, or both. You're the boss. That's the thing about being a freelancer. You're the boss of your business. You know what you need, and if you need to take that passion project, it's okay. Do it. Next slide now. Copyright. Another contract term you need to be clear on is who owns your work. And let's start out being clear about this. It is your work and you own it until you sell it or give it away. Now, the way the Copyright Office talks about this, it has to be in a fixed medium. So what's a fixed medium? Did you record it? Did you write it on your computer and save the file? In copyright terms, those are all forms of fixed media. Make sure you retain the copyright because with your passion project, because you never know when someone might buy it later, or you might want to rework the story for another media outlet. Actually, Stephanie Overman has made quite a business of reworking her stories for a lot of different outlets. And so you have your basic research and then you get paid time and time again, just by changing the story to go for a different outlet. Now, copyright can be tricky in this all electronic age. So make sure you know what you're selling. Are you selling the right to publish or air this story first? Or first publication plus maybe an exclusive for 90 days or 30 days, more or less. Make sure that it's specified in the contract. A magazine story for print or a newspaper story for print. Or are they going to put it on the publication's website? I'll tell you a story about a freelancer in Baltimore who wrote a personal essay, and an important personal essay for her because it had to do with her family. And she wrote it for USA Today. And then she found out that they were republishing it in a lot of other Gannett newspapers, and that's not what she agreed to. So she ended up having a rather nasty exchange with USA Today, and she won. They had to take it down off the other publications because they had not told her ahead of time that they were going to do that. So that's just one more little thing that should be in your contract. Who owns what? These days, more and more media outlets are asking for more and more rights. Some of them are willing to pay for the extra rights. Others are not. You're the boss. You decide what terms you're willing to accept. Next slide, please. And so, oops, wait a minute. We're still on contract basics on Zoom. There, tax. Now that April 15th is almost here, it's time to think about taxes. If you make a profit freelancing, you need to pay taxes on the profit. The filing threshold is very low, $400 profit. So that doesn't mean that the NPR station pays you $400 for the article and you have to pay taxes on the $400. Didn't you have some expenses there? You have expenses for running your business, advertising. It might be your website. It might be print copies of resumes if you're actually out in the world, which I hope more and more of us are these days. Paper, ink, paper clips to run your office, not for all your schoolwork, but just if you can take a portion of it that you are using for freelancing. There's equipment or other equipment costs, like so maybe a percentage of your cell phone bill if you use your phone for work. Dues, subscriptions, not your daily newspaper though. The IRS thinks that people should read their daily newspapers on their own dime and not be able to write that off. Travel expenses to come to meetings like this. Lunch, if you meet with the DCSPJ freelance group once a month. And if you're in DC and you don't meet with the freelance group and you want to, let me know or be in touch with Stephanie Overman. She's the one who keeps the email list. Now, there are rules. Not everything counts, but if you don't keep track of your expenses, you won't know whether you even have to tell the IRS about the money you made. So unless if you do enough work for a single client in the calendar year, $600, they have to tell the IRS how much they paid you. And you can reach that $600 threshold pretty quickly. Let's say the local newspaper pays you $150 a week to write a weekly column. You're over $600. And if they do their job as a business, they're going to tell the IRS that they paid you more than $600. So keep track of your expenses from the start. Use Expensify or another app, or I have a basic Excel workbook that I used in my first year freelancing. I can share a link if you want, just shoot me an email. And speaking of which, next slide, please. This is how you can get in touch with me. It's hazel@hazelbecker.com. That's pretty easy. And a few other ways as well. And I'll help you if I can. And if I can't, then I can try to help you find somebody else who can. So that's my presentation. And I think we can go back to oh, thank you, Clayton. We can go back to the Zoom screen now and take that down. Yeah. Clayton and I will take questions now. And if you're here in the room and you have questions, what we need you to do is, do we have paper for people to write them down on?
We do not.
Oh, so, well,
Show must
okay.
go on. Let's just yell it out, and hopefully, like, I'll hear it. Or Hazel, please repeat the question for the audience members when they speak it.
I agree with you, Clayton, but let's see what the tech people say, because are we going to have a feedback loop?
Shouted questions should be all right. Alternatively, if you want to communicate those questions to me, I can type them in chat.
Okay, and for the people who are joining us by Zoom, you feel free to put your questions in the chat as well.
Big shout out to the tech people. Thank you for making this happen.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So questions? Dina.
Can you parse, what if it was like an HE freelancer? I don't know if it's federal or New York or California. There was some law that chatter on the
AB5. Okay. Dina's asking about AB5. This is a law in California that has honestly, and I'm not just hyping this up, destroyed freelance businesses for a number of journalists.
I'm sorry, is this only for California?
It is only for California, but then the next step is it's been put into federal legislation, and it's called the PRO Act. And essentially what it says is there's an ABC test. And if you meet any of these three circumstances, then the outlet has to pay you as an employee and not as a freelancer. And that means you can't write off your expenses against your income. And that doesn't mean necessarily that the outlet is going to pay your expenses or provide you the equipment that you need. So the three are, let's see if I can get them. If you work in the office, if you are doing work in the same business, and this is the tricky one for journalists. So if a newspaper, or let's talk about a magazine that uses a lot of freelance work. Why does a magazine or a news outlet, online news outlet, want to use freelancers? They want to use freelancers because they want a variety of voices. And they can't hire 25 people on their payroll to put out all those 25 different voices. And so, but the way the law works, such news outlet would have to pay you as an employee. So your $850 that you're making for doing this story for them, they would have to take out employment taxes and all that kind of stuff. And they're not going to pay you the benefits that you would get if you were a full-time employee. So it relieves you of having to do employment taxes, but it does not then give you the benefit of being an employee.
So where does that stand?
Where does that stand? The PRO Act passed the House of Representatives. I believe that was last year, but there's not a question that it would pass again. Question is, would it pass in the Senate? And I think the answer is no, because the business people are not interested. The business oriented, i.e. Republican Party, are not interested in having there be more unions. And this is legislation that's pushed by the union. And I'm not doing a very good job of talking about it, I'm sorry, but just Google PRO Act and you can find out more about it. And we are writing more and more about it in a number of different journalism organizations. Columbia Journalism Review has had a few stories. I believe it's also been in the Quill. So you can find out about it there. Somebody else? Another question? Let's see. Okay, I have a comment from on the Zoom chat who says it's Katarina Spasovska from WCU. That's what's the W? Oh,
I think she's in North Carolina. She's a professor in North Carolina.
Western Carolina. That's right. That's right. So she says she has students who have had stories spiked. So yes.
No question?
I don't have any more questions on the Zoom.
All right, for both you and Hazel and Clayton, regarding Hazel's very administrative presentation, what are like some administrative tips for keeping track or approaching, keeping track of receipts, or like how do you organize your office to keep track of all this stuff so you're ready for tax season and you just have a better grasp on mileage and expenses and all that? Like, what's 3 things I can do to be more organized in that sense?
One is to have an app on your phone or your iPad or whatever you carry around with you. And one of the apps, one that I've used actually is called Expensify. And it just helps you categorize things. If you look, if you are filing as a freelance professional, and the story is a little bit different for students, I'll talk about that in a minute, but if you're filing as a professional and you file a 1040, either alone or with a spouse or however you file it, you're going to end up filing a Schedule C. And if you just call up the Schedule C online and look and see the different categories that they want you to divide your expenses into, that's all of the categories that you have to keep. So there is advertising, there are supplies, there's communication, there are professional fees, there are dues, Dues and subscriptions, I believe, are still together on the Schedule C. There, you might have online fees if you have a website for your business, and you ought to be able to write off that all of your expenses for the website. So if you just keep track of those throughout the year, then at the end of the year, you just total them up and put them down on the Schedule C, and that's your expenses for the year.
As a follow-up, what are examples of some of the expenses you don't have to keep track?
You mean things you can't write off?
Yes. But you might instinctively think you got to keep receipts on as you're going along, but it doesn't matter.
I see. You do not have to have a receipt every time you take an Uber. You do not have to have a receipt every time you get on a bus or use a metro. Just keep track of those in a file. It can just be a file, a note. If you have a notes app on your cell phone, can just keep track of those throughout the year and then add them up at the end of the year. As I said, you don't put your local newspaper down. And I thought of another one a minute ago.
What about Clayton?
Clayton, you have ideas about what you don't have to keep track of?
No, how does he organize?
Okay.
Anything of the business aspect to be prepared for
For tax season.
or tips, that isn't reporting.
Clayton?
So I wish I was a little bit more on top of that part of freelancing. I do have a tax professional I go to and just try to bring everything. The first app that Hazel said, what was it, Hazel, again?
Expensify.
Yes, I heard that from other colleagues of how they do it. Another app I could possibly recommend, I want to say, is Evernote. Evernote's an app to where you scan and digitize business cards, probably receipts and other things of that nature, and it can go into your email directly, and other cool ways to scan those items. Sorry to go off subject for one moment. I actually want to talk about spiking for one moment. Spiking, like Hazel said, is when the story does get published. But one thing you can negotiate with the outlet you're writing for are kill fees. Kill fees is the amount that they still have to pay you in the event that the story doesn't get published. So depending on what step you are, say if you're writing a 600-word piece for an outlet, but they nits it like 2 days before you're about to turn it in, or whatever reason that they're no longer going to take it. If spoken beforehand, you guys can talk about the kill fee to where they still have to pay you because you did the research, you wrote, you took time out of your schedule that you could have used to get other opportunities to write it. So with spiked stories and spiked opportunities, try to negotiate kill fees within it so it's not a complete loss.
Good point. And that I will say that a standard kill fee used to be 25%. Does anybody have more recent experience that says it would be more? That Stephanie's shaking her head no. So that's apparently still a fairly standard provision in a contract. I did think of another item that you need to keep track of your expenses, and that's mileage on your car. And the IRS actually has some pretty strict rules about how that has to be done. You have to know your mileage at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year, and then you add up all the miles that you have written down throughout the year that you drove for work. And then you take that as a percentage of the total miles that you drove. And so that's one reason to be using Expensify or Evernote or the Notes app on your phone or on your iPad. So other questions? Let's see.
Computer sites where they want to find writers, so they worth the time and effort.
That's a really good question, and I'll repeat it in case it wasn't heard on. Did everybody on the Zoom hear it?
Repeat it one more time. I want to make sure I hear it clearly, please.
Okay, the question is about websites like Upwork and some of the other writing websites that have that post jobs, assignments, and you can bid on them. And for the most part, my experience with them from years ago is that they were not worthwhile because the competition from other parts of the world, people will bid on the jobs and be willing to do it for maybe a tenth of what I would be willing to do it for. So I tend not to pay much attention to those. Journalismjobs.com is a different story. But finding freelance gigs on journalismjobs.com doesn't really work. SPJ has on the freelance community website a link to a database of publications and their pitching guidelines. And it's free. You don't have to be a member of SPJ to make use of the database. And there are calls for pitches. There's a screen on that database that has calls for pitches. That's another way to find gigs. I recommend not wasting time on a lot of those websites that are purport to help you find writing gigs.
To also follow up behind Hazel, yes, I agree. I haven't had the opportunity to work for Upwork, Fiverr, and those other ones, but I haven't heard good things for it. So the market isn't going there, or at least freelancers aren't going that direction. A direction I can point you in is a Twitter account you should follow is Writers of Color. The Twitter account is called Writers of Color. So the cool thing about them, they post and retweet opportunities from editors and outlets all the time. So, but the most important thing is they ask, how much does it pay? And certain places actually bury that. They want to dazzle you with the fact that they're a prestige publication so they can bring you in, possibly overwork you a bit more and other things of that nature. But Writers of Color actually ask, how much does it pay? And they have a sad trombone when they don't share that info. Like, it's actually quite funny. Please, Writers of Color on Twitter, look them up, see the sad trombone thing, and you're going to see a lot of funny things. But there's Writers of Color. There's also Freedom of Writing, which is another source that you can actually find stories from. Freedom of Writing. What's another one? Oh, I want to say Writing with Tim. That's also a Twitter account that you can follow. Writing with Tim. Freelance with Tim. Thank you for correcting. Freelancing with Tim is another one I follow. Is another popular one. Writers of Color, Freedom with Writing, Freelancing with Tim. And another one which provides structure is the Writers Market. So if you were to go on Amazon.com, the Writers Market release a yearly edition every year where publications, the amount that they pay, the way to contact them, and other things to help you actually reach, approach, and make a story happen with them. Inside the Writers Market, they also have query letters, or at least the emails or messages that you send out to them to express an interest that you're writing for them and how to properly say the right things with it. They tell you what to say, what not to say, and other structural things that you can use. Once again, it's called the Writers Market. It's a large book, most likely in your library too, that you could purchase on Amazon as well.
Yep.
Couldn't hear the second one. Freedom from?
So sorry. Freedom with Writing. Excuse me.
With writing. And the other one was Freelancing with Tim. And this is Tim Herrera, who used to be one of the assignment people at the New York Times. And he now does a freelancing newsletter. I highly recommend his newsletter. He has interesting things in it. There's also a website called the Writers Co-op. Well, there's a podcast too. That is from Jen Gritters and Wudan Yan, and they just really talk up freelancing and have a podcast that will tell you how how to, all the different aspects, how to query, how to find outlets, different kinds of writing too. They don't own, huh?
Can you repeat that?
The writers co-op, right.
I also co-sign that the writers co-op. They talk about all aspects, which includes even overbooking, balancing, know when to say no, and other things that are really a part of the journey of freelancing. So the writers co-op is another great source to learn from.
Yep. Robert?
Yeah, just come back to spiking the field fees.
Yes.
Contract probably should be clear on if the story is spiked, so if we sell the story to somebody.
Okay, I'll repeat that in case people on Zoom couldn't get it. If your story is spiked, your contract should specify who then owns the work that you did. Are you free then to sell the story to someone else, even if they pay you a kill fee for it? So
I want to say yes. My freelancing opportunities hasn't gone to the extent of contracts. I only done that thing once, but yes, they paid you for their work. They paid you for the work. It never went out through the channels or through the website. So you have a nice piece of work that you put time and effort in with thorough research and whatnot. It deserves to get seen by other people. So you get paid a kill fee. They're not accepting it. Definitely go ahead and hit the market to see who else you could sell that story to.
all right, good, very good.
Oh, Hazel, we also have a question in the chat from Ms. Kasoma. The question I'm reading is, do you have any tips for how to get started freelancing for international media outlets?
Okay.
To lead with the answer. Sorry, Hazel. I want to say first, you need to find whichever outlet that you look for. Like I mentioned earlier, find the outlet, figure out their audience, what type of content they produce, study it for whatever amount of time it is. Also see if they have pitching guidelines and if they're accepting freelancers. Another tip that I have used is to see the writers of those pieces, especially if there's material I write about, find the editor. Find their social media handles, reach out to them, give them props for the amazing piece that brought you to the website, but then also ask, how can you actually produce things? And then hopefully you can find an idea or a topic that you're passionate about, shape it into where it fits into the same content that you produce, and a step forward should be made from there.
Good, good. We do have some international outlets listed in the freelancing, in the pitching guidelines database. Not only Al Jazeera English and the Guardian US, plus the Guardian UK, but there are a number of Canadian publications listed there, a number from the UK. We don't focus on gathering international outlets that are taking work from freelancers internationally, but they end up in there because people have used them. And the pitching guidelines database, by the way, is crowdsourced. And if you use it and you know a publication or a media outlet that uses freelancers and you don't see it listed there, there's a link. I hope there's a link to a form that you can fill out, and then we will consider adding it to the database. And if anybody wants to help SPJ freelance community keep up the databases, if you want to get involved, and that's part of the networking, as Clayton was talking about. The SPJ freelance community is a good place to volunteer your time. And you can find us online on Twitter at SPJ Freelance. And is it just SPJ Freelance? Yes, I think it is. Or it may be SPJ Freelance Community, but if you just put it in, don't go to the one that has board attached to it, because for some reason that's defunct. And the other place is we have a Facebook group that has almost 3,000 members. And it's a good place to go to find out about things that are coming up that you might want to apply for. Most important, it's a community where you can ask questions and get the hive mind to help you figure out how to solve a certain problem that you're having freelancing. I know that Dina has used it a number of times. I have used it. So feel free to go onto Facebook if you are still on Facebook and search for SPJ Freelance Community and apply for membership, and we'll be glad to have you join us.
And yes, I have used it as well.
I forgot. You're right.
Yes.
Zubair is, Rezwan is here, and he has a question in the chat. Do you have any type of permission form, for instance, the government to start freelancing? And the answer is no. The government does not give permission to journalists in the US. Zubair is here from Afghanistan. He's living in Arlington or Alexandria?
Yeah.
Alexandria, Virginia. And
He's going to speak in a panel in this room in just a few minutes.
right, and we welcome him. We're so glad that he has found refuge in the United States, and he will have some interesting things to say on the next panel. So if you're in the room with us, go out and get a little bite to eat or whatever, and then come right back in the same room. You'll hear him and some other international journalists talk about how correspondents and local journalists work together, or whatever, or not. Right. So any other questions?
I have one.
Yes.
Is your general approach to propose first and write later, or do you spend much time writing on spec?
Well, even if you write on spec, you probably want to propose it first, because you don't want to put a lot of time into a story that you don't know there's a market for. That was always my approach.
And my other question is, if you get paid for your story, don't you lose the right to it, whether they spike it or not?
If you get paid for your story and it gets spiked, it should be covered. There should be a provision in the contract that says whether they're going to own it or you're going to own it. If they pay you 25% of the original $800 fee for doing the story, they didn't pay you $800 for the story, they paid you $200. And if you signed a contract or had an email exchange, an agreement with them that said that they would pay you a kill fee, but it didn't say that they would then own the work, then they don't own it. You own it. You can get paid and own it too, because they didn't pay you what they said they would. So I know it's hard to wrap your mind around it, but it's true. If you wrote it, you own it until you give the rights to someone else. And what rights did you give? What did it say in the contract? Were you telling them that they could publish it first and then they declined to publish it? And does that mean that it can't ever be published anywhere?
Well, what's the common law approach? If you don't have a contract, tell a story. Who owns the story after the first year?
Okay, I'll go back to what I said at the very top of this presentation. Contracts are essential. Don't let that scare you away, because essentially you have one anyway, because you agreed to do something for someone else for compensation. And that is a contract. Now, enforcing that verbal contract is not necessarily going to be all that easy, or may not be that easy, and it may be more trouble than it's worth for you. But
If you, when you say you don't have a contract, if you have a conversation with an editor, you can send an email back saying, just summarizing, here's what we spoke about, like word count, deadline, content. So that's, my understanding is that there are different ways, a contract can be different things, including an email.
absolutely
So
true.
then they respond, yes, no, this. You can include more once you get more savvy over these different points.
Right.
Do that.
Right. Absolutely do it. Absolutely do it. Write it down one way or another. And if that happens to be a legal piece of paper or file on a computer, so be it. And if not, it doesn't matter. You still have a contract. The question is, what are you going to do to enforce the contract? It's in your hands.
Yes, Hazel, can I also chime in as well?
Yes, please.
Yes, as a freelancer who hasn't got that much contractual work, I see it as, if the event that the story doesn't get published, but I still get paid from it, that's the kill fee. So that's them paying me for my work. You still put in work to produce something, and it deserves to go somewhere. So I guess rule of thumb, wait about a week or two, because if they let go of that piece, they're lost, number one. Number two, they probably get busy with whatever other things they have in their agenda that they're too forward to actually remember it. So please shop around those opportunities. To also emphasize Hazel's point about the writing down, the emails and all the things like that, establishing all that information, those are things that you can reference to. So I'm not sure, or sorry, from my experience, I never had to use an email thread as in the legal battle, whatnot. However, that is information we can use to emphasize why we followed all the instructions. I listened to your deadline. I adhered to your deadline. I made your work count, and it's almost like not our fault why they had a killer, they chose not to. So to reiterate the answer, if an item if you get paid for work that did not get published, that is still your work. Unless it's established otherwise that you can't publish it, it is yours. Feel free to push it anywhere else. And in the event that you don't get a lot of contractual opportunities like Hazel has in her career, just know the fact that it's still yours. Unless it's said otherwise, it is yours, especially if you got paid for it, but it hasn't been seen to the world. Your work deserves to get seen, read, or like interpreted. So it's totally worth still putting it out there, even in the event that someone decides not to use it.
Thanks. I agree. It is 10 o'clock almost, and we have to relinquish the room because the international panel is going to be next right here in this room. I appreciate everybody coming today, and be in touch.
Thank you, everyone. I'm very grateful.
We'll talk next week.
Not a problem. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.